What is up, team? Welcome back to the Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast. I'm Pat Kane, and tonight I'm joined once again on an unlikely scenario. St. John's gets a victory, and I promised Cole if they were to do that, he'd be welcome back on. So he took me up on the offer. They didn't make it easy tonight. We almost had to keep him in the bullpen for one extra game. St. John's did their best to, keep us on our toes late, we'll say, but they did just do just enough to skate away with a 79-70 victory at Georgetown. Cole, welcome back, my man. How are you?
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, I don't even know how to handle myself after a win. I'm not going to have my usual saltiness. Your followers are not going to be happy with my usual grumpiness attitude. Dude, I always try to take notes when I know you're going to have me on over the course of the game, so I have all the knowledge and the stats, and I can bring the readiness and alacrity for your fans. But today's notes were a little bit simpler than usual. I'm not sure if you can see that. That's really all I wrote down was
loud and clear. For those who can't see this, for those who aren't on YouTube yet, get along. But those who couldn't read what Cole had there, it was just a big sign that said G-Town sucks. And that perfectly surmises the opponent we were facing tonight. G-Town is absolutely terrible.
Not the best team I've seen St. John's play in or out of conference. That is for sure. It was an insanely sloppy game by both teams. I think even we had 16 turnovers, at least 20 turnovers for Georgetown. And, we might have set the game of basketball back 15, 20 years, but at least we came out on the right side of it.
Yeah, speaking of turnovers, I was joking to you before we started about 40 minutes of hell. We saw maybe, like you said, 22 minutes of hell. The St. John's defense got ramped up. The pressure was there for some stretches, and it looked really good turning Georgetown over. We didn't see it, full-fledged. We didn't see it continuous for the whole length of the game. We are, not the deepest team at this point, but still, perhaps Mike Anderson has took notice that the fans are looking to see some more of that pressure defense that was so much of his calling card early on.
Yeah, I know you and I have talked about it previously, and it sort of boggles my mind, this team's ability to go on runs and hold people defensively and score some baskets, and then simultaneously their ability to piss away those points that they've gone up by. I think today we went up by 15 with 4 minutes and change left in the first half. By the 17-minute mark of the second half, we were only up by 4. So Georgetown goes on a 15-4 run during that time. And it just, again, how we can't draw something up, get a bucket to stop that bleeding, I will never be able to understand. But as soon as that game was cut to 4, that was when Spears went down. Mike Anderson immediately turns up the pressure. And I think Georgetown had 3 possessions in a row where they didn't even get the ball over half court. 3 immediately, unforced turnovers leading to 6 points for us. And from that point, we felt more in control of the game than I felt when we had pissed away a 15-point lead. So I loved seeing the pressure that we frankly haven't seen enough of all season, and really it's something that Mike Anderson's supposed to hang his hat on. But better late than never. Maybe he's saving it for the Big East tournament, and we can win out and climb our way.
Is it a good sign? And this is a rhetorical question, I guess, that I like you felt like we were in most control in those moments in the game when there seemingly was no control going on in the game. Controlled chaos, if you want to give us the compliment, more just muck the game up and hopefully our athleticism, our pressure is too much for them to handle. But it's not reassuring because we've seen it's not sustainable to create offense that way and to continue to get turnovers that way. And we saw the downside of it even in that second half. Although we were able to turn them over, Georgetown was able to beat us in the backcourt and get some easy threes out of just quick 4-on-3s from beating our pressure. I think they hit 9 threes tonight, 40%, something close to that, and that's way too good. So that's the other side of that coin of applying pressure full court. Yeah, you get the turnovers, and yes, momentum can shift. But like you said, we see those runs, and they're not always good runs. We're on the bad side of them too often. Tonight, I think. Right before they cut it to 4, we pushed it back up, and then they went on another run to eventually tie it. And that was, I don't want to point it out because he didn't play much tonight, but King was in for those 3 minutes. I don't think he played at all outside of those minutes in the second half, and just happened to happen during that stretch for whatever reason. The guy's in, and we didn't get any good looks during that stretch, and they hit 3 threes and another bucket, and next thing you know, you go from being up 9 to the tied, and that's why coaches are so hesitant to go deep in their bench. Tim Brando, don't worry, King will be back.
One of the classic staples of any St. John's coach team is giving up wide open 3-pointers. It's a necessity for playing at St. John's, is you have to leave the opposing team wide open from three. But I think, like you said, Georgetown shooting 40% from three. I think we shot 2 for 14 on the game, so that really helped keep Georgetown in it when, frankly, I thought we outplayed them for the majority of the game. And then, like I said before, like 16 turnovers on our end. So between giving up 16 turnovers and shooting 2 for 14 from three, that you're gonna let anybody hang in the game, even a team as poor as Georgetown. So,
yep. And St. John's welcomed Curbelo back, and Andre Curbelo, after being suspended for 2 straight games, he'll tell you he didn't know why. I'm sure he did know why, but maybe he convinced Zach Rizzuto that he didn't. Who knows? And he made a nice contribution. I thought he played well. I thought he made an impact that helped us win that game. So good for him for getting back in the lineup. We'll see if he can finish the season strong. Still frustrating as all hell to watch. I was joking with you, Cole. Like, it's hard to tell how much he really cares on a lot of the plays. He's working his ass off on one play, and then he's, walking back the next play, or he's making a really fundamentally sound play on one trip down, and he's making the flashiest of passes, or the lackadaisical play on another. Like that, we were saying to the end of the game when he got that long rebound and passed behind his back to Posh, ended up being the play to kind of seal the game. It was still just so nonchalant. So whatever happens. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating for a kid who's obviously very talented.
I think I think we had a 2-point lead at that point. I mean, you screw that behind the back pass up and we kick it out of bounds or something like that. And all of a sudden,
he turned it over. Now that I remember, he turned it over. We were up 2. He turned it over, and then they blew the alley-oop with a chance to tie it. He gets the long rebound and then do it. And then he passed behind the back to Posh. He finished it. And kudos to Posh, who up until that point was having another tough game. Looks just lost out there. Looks, I feel for him. I mean, we've mentioned it after a few of these games. It's just like some of these shots aren't even getting up to the basket. He's getting swallowed up before he can get a shot off, or it's a clunker off the rim from 15 feet away. It's tough. And he hit that big layup late, and he hit 2 free throws after that. There was a play earlier in the second half, and we were still right in the swings of it, and he didn't take the layup. You remember this play? He had a chance to take a layup off the break. He doesn't take it. And then we had one of the most mysterious / magical / hysterical possessions of St. John's basketball, and that's saying something. It was straight out of Globetrotters, and ended with a store 3, but we passed up 3 or 4 shots. We had 3 or 4 different guys drive wildly, and then it ended up with a store just saying, fuck it, let me just shoot it. I'm the best shooter on the team, and he hit the shot. So however it goes in, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to pile on Posh too much either, but I think, again, the game was tied, or maybe we had a 2-point lead at that point. Curbelo, with 2 minutes left, had made a really nice drive and kick out to Posh for a wide open 3, and Posh bricked it. I didn't realize that he was only shooting 17% from 3 this year.
That's Posh.
Which is really, really rough. Again, I don't want to pile too much on him, but as we've mentioned previously, it's like we were really relying coming on this season, and a lot of our hopes and dreams were pinned on him taking this huge step, and especially shooting from distance. And at this point in the end of the season, to be shooting 17% from 3 is atrocious, and couldn't be the polar opposite of what we were hoping for coming into the season.
I gotta be honest. I think the 17% has gone up in Big East play. So I mean, that's not I don't want to pile on either, but yeah, it's obviously a struggle when your main ball handlers, a lack of a shot is one thing when you pair them next to a few other guys who aren't threats, and we see the spacing issues we have. I know you see the spacing issues we have, Cole.
I always notice these things.
Yeah.
I also want to give credit to David Jones, who I know we get shouted him out last game for the way he's come back since the passing of his father, and hopefully him and his family are doing well. God bless them. Yeah. But I think he had finished with a double-double. I know he had at least 10 and 9. And the play you were mentioning where Curbelo throws the lackadaisical behind the back pass to Posh to really kind of seal the game for us. It was Jones who handled a 2-on-1 fast break and sort of came back off the lead man for G-Town when he went to throw a really stupid pass, and Jones had the intelligence to just bat it forward where he knew we had more players, and Curbelo got the easy rebound or loose ball and was able to push it to Bosch. So I couldn't believe what a heady play that was by Jones, and I was super impressed with his game today. I thought he was pretty much, especially in the first half, getting to the ball to the rim at will, both him and Storr.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which was great to see them. My favorite Jones is the attacking DJ, and it's awesome to see him when he puts his head down and gets the ball to the rim. So.
Yeah, he was aggressive tonight, and he made a good share of his shots. It wasn't a 6 for 23 shooting performance from tonight. He was right around. Yeah, exactly. Going to the right spots and keep attacking those boards. That's the one thing that you really do got to give him credit for, even when he's had his off shooting nights. He has been aggressive. He has been a big factor rebounding. Storr and him physically aren't too far apart. If you were just to walk up next to Storr and Jones and just look at them next to each other, you didn't know what position they played or the stats they had. They're not too far apart physically, really. Maybe Jones has a slight size and height advantage, but not much. And to see the difference in interior physical play between the two of those guys, to me, it gives me hope that AJ Storr can realize he could be such an asset, using that size. Tonight, I'm just going to read the box score now because we've been talking about stats. And I know once I do this, you can't see our beautiful faces, Cole, but I had this circled as a positive. Tonight, Storr had 15 points. Obviously, that's good. 6 for 14. Some people might say that's a bad shooting night. I say screw it. I mean, you're one shot away from 50%. It's not an awful shooting night by any means. And he was willing to take shots. The most shots on the team. We might have made it to near March, where this is the first game, I think, where you might have taken the most shots in a game. I'm not sure if that's happened yet.
And who's the best shooter on our team? Like, it's AJ Storr.
AJ Storr. Yeah.
So I say, it's him.
Yeah, get those shots up. But the only why I also want to bring this up is the 15 points are great. The fact he was still willing to shoot, awesome. 1 rebound, 0 assists, 0 steals, nothing else in a bunch of minutes. He probably played 30 minutes tonight. Mm-hmm. Look at everybody else in that box score that had minutes tonight. Everyone has a handful of boards. Everyone has 2 or 3 assists. Everyone has some steals. And it's just been a consistent thing where he just doesn't have those contributions in those other areas, and those really help you, offset an off shooting night. And a 6 for 14, like I said, there's plenty of guys who would be happy if they're 6 for 14. For Storr, we're saying it might be an off night, but if he can still, have some contributions using his size and athleticism in terms of blocks, steals, rebounds, assists, then he's going to go from being a good player to an unbelievable player, and hopefully in a St. John's uniform.
Dude, another stat that jumped out at me today during the game was Isaiah Naiwi, his free throw shooting numbers for the season. I think he's now shooting 5 for 19, a whopping 26%. What would your high school basketball coach do to you if you were shooting 26% on the season?
Well, we had these things called super champions, and that was 8 straight suicides. But we did them to the free throw line 8 times in a row, to half court 8 times in a row. And so we would have a couple super champions for sure the next day. It was funny. Steve Lapis, the announcer tonight, who, we gave credit the last time he was on, and I've said in the past I'd give him a bunch of shit, but he said something funny when NY made 1 for 2. He was like, they'll take that every day or something like that. 50-50 from the line. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody you mentioned Jones, you mentioned Cabela, the 2 bench guys. We talked about Storr. Paz struggled. Soriano had a decent night. I mean, not a double-double, but he shot well. I think it was
7 for 9, I think.
7 for 9, right? 16 points. Nothing else really strikes out. The 2 for 14 from 3, obviously, that's not usually good enough to get the job done against Georgetown, a team who we talked about at length is not very good. It was still sufficient enough for us to win.
Yeah, I think I love Soriano, and he's just made such a leap from his contributions last year. So can't speak enough for how hard he worked in the offseason, how much he changed his body in the offseason. The one thing I feel having a superstar big man is just so rare in this day and age, and especially at St. John's, we haven't seen this. I mean, since like Zeldin Hamilton? I mean, it's been forever that we had a real true post guy. I hate sometimes watching it where I feel like we just dump the ball into him down low, and there's really no other action being run, no movement by the guards offensively, and it's kind of just like feed the big man and let him go to work. And whether that ultimately leads to either Soriano forcing the ball, or we saw the one possession, I think it was towards the end of the first half, where I think you pointed out in our little text message thread that I think he held the ball for like 10 seconds or so,
Yeah.
with again nobody moving, and then they almost forced a steal. So I hate that when you have a star big man and it's just like we're just going to feed him because we have to feed him. They said multiple times, Mike Anderson's quote before the game was like, "Oh, we got to get the big man touches. We got to feed the big fella." And it's just like I hate just the feeding the big fella for the sake of feeding the big fella. It has to come in the flow of the offense. So.
Yeah. In the first half, he had a few really good passes, but most of those were when he was like turning and facing the basket. It wasn't like you said, with just his back to the basket, just pounding away.
Sort of from the high post, turning face.
Right. He had one to Wusu. He had another one. I forget to who, but it's weird. It's not weird. It's like you said, we throw it to him and it's just very obvious. It's 10 sets of eyes are just all on him. Did I count that right? Is there 10 sets of eyes on the basketball court? Yeah. And everyone turns and faces him because everyone knows what he wants to do. We're never working a baseline screen or, a screen to screener or even like a Spain type pick and roll screen where we're looking to him come off a screen and catch on the block. It's always like with the guy on his back posting up. It's never like, if you watch Xavier run it constantly, they run that pin down where they pass to the corner and simultaneously the guy will pin up screen to the guy at the elbow and he'll drop down and he'll pass from corner to baseline 3 or 4 times a game. It seems they run it. And we never really get him on an action catching while he's going block to block. It's always just a post up 15 feet, or 5 feet up the line, up the lane, never really. And we're just saying the same thing. I agree with you, Cole. I should have just said that. I agree 100%.
Dude, it does feel great though to be in the win column, to get to come on here and chop it up with you and not have to be complaining about a loss. With
Who
that,
knows?
Hey, maybe
Who knows?
This season.
We got to cherish them as we can. I mean, we pretty much wrapped this game up. To just quickly recap, we came out to a big lead. Georgetown came back and tied it. We won at the end. Yada yada yada. St. John's won. But the season's winding up, and there was Zach Braziller posted that article today about St. John's has decisions to make going forward. Pretty much put the axe down on Coach Anderson, saying your move, St. John's, and that he urges them to part ways. Cole, me and you've kind of discussed it. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Dude, I think
if you have any, not to put you on the spot.
No, I think in Braziller's article, he had a line specifically criticizing Anderson for the lack of pressing this season and how that was something that Anderson, had really hung his hat on prior to getting here, which I think he stole that from us. I think we had mentioned that the podcast before. So
take that, Georgetown. You got Zach Braziller and us to thank for tonight's pressure defense.
Yeah, I mean, dude, we've talked about it multiple times already. I think you and I are both kind of in agreement that I don't see this being a long-term sustainable situation with Mike Anderson. I'm hopeful that the financial means are there for this university to be able to make a move and move away from him. I think we all know who the main candidate is that you and I want, and that most of the fan base, at least the people on Twitter, kind of want to point to. The other guy in New York that's currently coaching at a little bit lower of a level right now, who's a little bit up there in age, even over Mike Anderson. But I want to know what you thought of some of his comments that came out today. It seems like he's got the itch to coach at a higher level. Whether or not, I think he specifically mentioned he wants to take if he's going to leave Iona, he wants to take a program on that has the possibility to get to a Final Four. Whether or not you think St. John's with Rick Pitino in 5 or 4 or 6 years could make a Final Four.
Well, I think he's a master salesman, so he's perfect at playing both sides of his, the coin and speaking out of both sides of his mouth. And he did nothing to limit his options or to write off, his Iona fans to say he's leaving. As good as gone. So a master class there by Pitino, and he's going to have a lot of fans. St. John's, Georgetown. I'm surprised by how little there has been discussed on who's going to be the new Georgetown coach. I know St. John's is a little bit more murky. It's not as clear that we'll cut ties.
Yeah.
Some would say it is clear that it's going to happen. I mean, I'm not as confident. I think it's definitely inching towards that. And like you said, I'm ready for that to be the case. But Georgetown hasn't been like tied to names like, and I know they have an active coach, but it's pretty much a
Yeah,
foregone conclusion.
after these last 2 years.
We've heard in the past like rumblings during season of where guys will land, and it just doesn't seem like there's been that momentum with Georgetown, and I'm surprised because Georgetown is a flagship program, and I would think coaches would be loving to get to a chance to the Big East, where I think it really is possible to have good success against schools that are you know likewise to Villanova and Marquette and Creighton, and St. John's is below that currently, but like those guys don't recruit 5-star talent; they recruit good basketball players. They develop talent. They get transfers to come in, and with the style of play that they all seem to play, it's possible to have real solid success in this conference, and then parlay that into some national success, like Providence and Seton Hall have done. I think a guy should look at St. John's or Georgetown as potential places where you can win in this league, and if you win in this league, you're right on the main stage. So,
and turn things around at programs that are potentially a little bit down in a very fast fashion. I mean, look at what Shaka's done in Marquette in just 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's amazing.
Sean Miller, yeah.
Yep.
That's the scary thing to me. You look at two different schools. You look at Xavier and you look at Pittsburgh, right? Now, Xavier last year, they won the NIT, but they still decided to fire their coach and to move on. And now they got Sean Miller, and look where they're at. They're hoping to maybe, march down and be a Final Four contender. And you had Pittsburgh, who after 4 years of Jeff Capel, worse than we've seen from Coach Anderson by far, 4 losing seasons, absolutely disgusting. And we've seen bad stuff here, but that is like by far, we would be rioting. And they decided to stick with him for a 5th year. And now he's second in the ACC, going to make the NCAA tournament. So hopefully, our administration isn't looking at the Pittsburgh model as getting lucky as with their 5th year, as opposed to Xavier with changing it up and choosing their direction of the program. Obviously, they both worked out, but I would much more like the option of choosing your next coach. And
how long did Seton Hall stick with Willard before he finally broke through and got to the tournament? I think that was 5 or 6.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what we'd have to be willing to do if we went a route that wasn't Pitino and more of along the Langle or the Jones or the Becker route.
Dude, going back to Pitino, I know we've talked before about like the financial means and whether or not St. John's, has the ability to deal with a Mike Anderson buyout and then getting a new coach. One of the things I found super interesting that I wasn't aware of before is Pitino having a $0 buyout currently with Iona. So that could help a penny pinching university in Queens.
Well, seriously, I mean, honestly, if $10 million is something that you're considering as too much, and it is a shit ton of money, if the $2 million you'd save from most other places, maybe you have to pay out of the buyout. That's something towards it, right? It's something, and St. John's might be having to look for every little bit of something they need. Do you have a guy other than Pitino where you'd be like, if not him, I want this guy?
Man, I mean, I know I trust you a lot more with sort of like the mid-major guys, the up-and-coming guys like you've mentioned multiple times. I always am like have my eyes on those bigger fish. Pitino, Chris Mack after a year of sitting on his butt, is he okay with coming? And then it's like, do these guys even have New York ties? Obviously, Pitino is the big fish, but like a Chris Mack, he's coached in the Big East before, so he's got familiarity. Obviously, just other random coaches that maybe you take them on like a second run. Like if Ohio State is dumb enough to get rid of like Chris Holtman, like whether or not he would have any interest in St. John's, I have no idea. But you're talking about a guy that's basically never missed the NCAA tournament during his times at Ohio State. With some Big East ties. I look at things like that would at least pique my interest.
Right.
I don't want to
Chris
say
Mack 100%. If you told me Chris Mack's going to be our coach next year, I would just close the book and say, absolutely, let's get to the games. I'd be completely fine with that. I'd actually be ecstatic. Yeah. But Chris Holtman too. Like what is going on this year is crazy. And it's out of whack, and it's a disaster. But 5 years prior, 20 win seasons, NCAA tournament every year at Ohio State, at Butler. Mm-hmm. I mean, having one bad year is the weather. It's not the climate. And he's just having a tough stretch here. Like, he's not a bad basketball coach. I saw, people talking about, like, if Calipari got fired, would you take him? And, like, absolutely, I would take John Calipari at St. John's. It's like, yeah. Did you see what he did at Memphis? If you like If you're worried he's not going to recruit the same way he did at Kentucky as he does at St. John's, absolutely he's not going to recruit the same way. But it's not the same, deal. You don't have to juggle 10 All-Americans in a locker room. You get your 4 really good guys. You get 3 other good players that get at Memphis, and you dominate a lesser league. Obviously, the Big East is not the Conference USA or whatever it was when he was in Memphis, but absolutely, I'd take John Calipari.
Yeah, if you want to talk the
It's not
are
even worth
we
mentioning. It's never going to
people
happen.
questioning whether or not we're on drugs type, candidates like John Calipari or Jay Wright like want to come into St. John.
Yeah,
I would take
please.
that. I'd be
Oh my
doing
God.
cartwheels down
Yeah,
New Utopia for the entire.
yeah, I would be happy with Chris Mack. Obviously, Pitino is a shoe-in candidate. If he's interested at all and you don't sniff around, then that's negligence on St. John's part, 100%. And he says he wants to go to a program that went a Final Four. I mean, God damn it, if someone can take St. John's to a Final Four, it's Rick Pitino breathing and walking. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So go ahead and give it a shot. It'll just be
Do
really
it.
disheartening if it's Georgetown.
We'll put a statue out in front right next to the Louis statue. Like,
I think we need Louis to just come out and say he wants to. Go call for it, Lou. I know, he's not going to kill your legacy. You'll always be number one. But God damn it, if you say you want it, we'll give it to you. I'm sure.
Dude, so while we're like hitting the rumor mill and we've wrapped up the G-Town St. John's analysis,
Stunner, yeah.
What do you make of some of these rumors coming out about some potential more conference realignment, and now this may be starting to affect like basketball schools and biting into the Big East potentially? I know I saw a little bit of rumblings last week about the Big 12 potentially looking at expanding. I know they were talking about the same names that you always hear that would come out of our conference, like a UConn or a Villanova. And weirdly enough, I even saw St. John's name mentioned there. I guess they're trying to potentially get a stranglehold on Madison Square Garden. And then today, I think I saw rumors about UConn and the ACC. I think this has always kind of been one of my biggest fears with all the conference realignment is like, when does it finally get to a point where all of the big football schools have done their movement? And then you get these lesser conferences that are left when, the SEC has sucked the life out of the Big 12, and then the Pac-12 has been decimated by the Big 10. When did those conferences try to be like, okay, well, we can sort of identify ourselves as a basketball conference and pluck some of and get a sort of a imprint on the Northeast by sucking some of these Big East schools? You mentioned before when we were talking about whether coaches would be interested in the Big East. I frankly love the Big East of the way it's currently constructed, having this like round robin of home and home, everything. It's it's just the best basketball conference, and unfortunately we're at the bottom of that with DePaul and Butler. But it's just seeing all the coaches, even with Butler, with even like a guy like Thad Matta, just like the names and the coaches. Like
it's just basketball. Like it is just pure basketball. It's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's all about its basketball, and that's all I'm about. So I fucking love the Big East. I think what it's always had going for it, at least since realignment has been prominent in the last 10 or so years, is Big East could be the best of the rest. And in that sense, losing in Connecticut doesn't worry me. But once you start to hear rumors of other pillars, cornerstones of the Big East, like a Villanova or Georgetown, attaching them to a Connecticut or to another conference, you better hope St. John's is on that lifeboat, because that's really when it becomes a sink or swim scenario where the shift between the haves and the have-nots would be, St. John's would be going towards the have-nots and more like an A10, if you will, and I love the A10. And if you were going to say if you were a VCU fan these last 15 years, hell, you've had a lot more fun than a St. John's fan. It's not like, it's a death sentence for a team that you follow. St. John's could maybe even have more success if they're playing the A10. But it's like you said, being a part of the conference, following the recruiting, the coaches who want to coach there. It's just, you're on a bigger stage. It's a bigger environment. The ceiling is much higher. So if you were to start to hear rumblings or that it shifts towards a conglomerate like the Big 12 wants to get to 16 for all sports, but maybe not 16 for football, and they want to get that East Coast maybe piece of the pie, so they reach out to Villanova and Georgetown. If you're St. John's, you gotta fight tooth and nail and try to package yourself as the best you can to not get left out in the cold. I haven't really worried about your doomsday scenario, not to diminish it because it's certainly possible, about Georgetown and the Big East schools falling apart, but I do kind of expect, even when they came across, that UConn was not for long, and whatever they decide to do, whatever, fuck it. If we make 30 million off them in a few years, we made 30 million off them in a few years. They give us a national championship the year. we're going to count it as a Big East national championship, for however many years we're playing college basketball. So I could care less, honestly. UConn does help right now, but like we're I don't think they stopped talking about us if it was just the 10 teams again in sans UConn. You know what I mean? It's good. It's good. They've helped us this year, but I don't think it's like a huge loss where it's debilitating.
It's the pessimist in me, Pat. I'm always looking at the mushroom cloud doomsday scenario.
Yeah, well, we'll never be that Big East team that had UConn and Syracuse and Louisville and West Virginia and Pittsburgh and like all those teams at the top of the top of their I don't know their history, but a lot of Pittsburgh, like Louisville, like they were really like peak schools in the Big East right then, and Syracuse was still really rolling. It's never going to be that type of conference again where it's like just like school on top of school. But if you can get 11 to 12 likewise schools, if Connecticut leaves, you go get Dayton or who knows, similar type school, and you can fill those spots. I think for a long while, as long as you hold on to that core four. Really, if you're St. John's, I'm talking about like Villanova and Georgetown. You got to stay associated with those guys.
Great. Thanks for talking about that, dude.
Yeah, dude, no problem. I like talking a little bit more than just these games. It's good to come on a win. We didn't have to, sour too long about what went wrong. St. John's for tonight is in the right spot. They got a win against Georgetown. They're 17 and 12, 17 and 12 on the year. 7 Big East wins. If they win out, they can get to 9-11 in Big East play. Connecticut at home, Marquette on the road. Neither of them will be easy, but hey, we'll see what happens. Cole, thanks for joining me again. You got a player you want to shout out tonight?
How about Justin Brownlee?
Wow, one of my faves. All right, well, for Pat Kane and Cole Latshaw, we're Justin Brownlee, the Red Storm Rap Reaction Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.
Thanks, man.